All right, so this recording, it's going to be a conversation about the Second Amendment, specifically the history of it. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
My name's Rohan Nawal, and I live in India, and I'm in the 11th grade.
Cool, man. Well, so we're generally going to talk about, we had a little Twitter argument, I guess, about the history of the Second Amendment, specifically what the exact intentions of it were. So I guess the first thing I kind of wanted to start with was like how do we know something basically? And what I mean by that is, if I'm trying to say like what a historical consensus was, what is a good system that we can use to figure that out?
Also, in my opinion, a good system that we can use is direct quotes from the founders.
Just direct quotes.
Yeah, like if you want to take the Second Amendment and then, like, if you're arguing over interpretations of different clauses, then the best source that you can do to define certain words is take quotes from the founders.
Okay, but that won't necessarily help you because you don't
Why?
necessarily know what they mean by certain words, right?
Like, if let's assume you have a dispute over what the word militia means,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the founders clearly state that the militia means so and so, isn't it not clear that does that not make the interpretation of that clause clearer?
Well, it depends. Is he the person who wrote it? Did everyone agree with what he said, right? Like, we need to have some ability to draw a consensus here. You can't just go with cherry picked quotes because what if you have two quotes that disagree? How do you choose between those two quotes if they disagree?
Do you have any proof that there are like two contradictory quotes between any of the founders regarding this?
Well, you're telling me we need quotes. I don't think quotes are necessarily the best way to do it. I mean, we have plenty of stuff like
So,
written, like so. I don't need like random one-off quotes. The stuff I'm going to be referring to in this is going to be primarily the two Federalist papers written about it, where they talk about it in context specifically to do with the militia. There's research done that shows that the concept of bearing arms was understood within the context of a militia most of the time, not all the time. So most people, when they used most writing at the time when speaking about bearing arms, was understood within the context of a militia. Like you couldn't actually separate these two concepts out um, for most
are you
people.
also aware that the militia is just comprised of normal everyday people?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like normal everyday people. It's like training, right? Like, I mean, it's included in the amendment. Like, I got it pulled up right here, so I'll just read it real quick. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Pretty quick, right? You know, the well-regulated militia, like that's not just regular people. It's regular people who go through training. The people in the United States currently are not regularly going through training unless you're actively involved in the National Guard or the Federal Army.
Yeah, I have a quote from George Mason right here. Quote, I ask who are the militia? They consist of the whole people except a few public officers.
Yeah, most people did serve in the militia at certain times, but like we said, there's active training there, whatever.
Wait, so are you saying that anyone who is not actively serving in the militia can have the right to keep and bear arms deprived from them?
Yeah, I am. Or I'm telling you that was
Okay,
their
now,
initial intent. Not that it should be necessarily deprived, but that the right to bear arms is understood within the context of militia. So the first 10 amendments of the Constitution within a historical context were meant to constrain the federal government from imposing on the
yeah, the
states.
federal government. Yeah, I understand
Wait,
that,
hold
but
on. This is very, very important. It's to keep the federal government from imposing on the states. If we agree upon that, then the Second Amendment is not an individual right; it's a state right to allow the states to maintain their own militias without the federal government telling them what they can't do. If that's the case, then it's incoherent to understand the federal government being able to tell states what arms they're allowed to give their citizens in their given states.
yeah, but are you aware of, do you know what selective incorporation is?
Oh no, feel free to explain it.
So, so selective incorporation was established during the 14th, when the 14th Amendment was passed, and basically said that all rights conferred on the federal level were then conferred on the state level. This was passed, like, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment were passed after the Civil War.
Yep.
And this was primarily done so that, what do you call, freed slaves do not have their rights trampled by individual state governments, and they receive, like, it was originally written so that all slaves would get their constitutional rights protected.
So
No.
I'm aware of this, and I have no problem with that. I very much like the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. What we were arguing about is specifically the initial intent of the founding fathers, which was not for individuals to own guns. You can say we later expressed that desire through that, and I think you'd have a kind of hacky argument there anyway, because they're talking about like the freedom of religion, right? They're saying, oh, states can restrict your religion, can restrict your free speech, right? Within the context of owning guns, that's not saying you can own guns. It's saying that they can own militias. An individual can't create their own militia because an individual can't be a militia. A militia is a combination of citizens. So even if I accept your the incorporation that you're talking about, which I am familiar with, it doesn't actually help you here because I'm telling you, the Second Amendment is explicitly.
So you're talking about intent when the Constitution was written, right?
Yep.
So when the Second Amendment was written, or you know the Dred Scott case, right?
Yeah.
Are you aware that Roger Taney in that decision stated that if Dred Scott was considered a citizen, that he would be able to keep and bear arms?
I did not know that. Let's see.
Okay, I'll pull up.
Taney is a monumental piece of shit, but
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Like, there's a lot of this thing regarding that case. If you read into it about how the case was actually like manipulated by the president, but he was very sure on the keep and bear arms part.
Let's see. Oh, geez, it's just someone's like 3-page paper. I'm not sure I want to read that. Oh, wait. Okay.
Just a minute. Forgot where I. Wait. Whilst I found it, do you have any proof that any of the founders saw the Second Amendment as a collective right, like in the collective right theory?
Yeah. So, well, we have to infer it from like many things that they wrote. So, like for example, like the Federalist Papers, they don't like really talk about it explicitly that much. That's sort of the problem. You're never going to have like a hard line, like proof of like their explicit belief on something like this, or on many things, I should say, not this or whatever. But like, and so Federalist 29 is about the militia, which is explicitly like outlining why they wanted militia, the purpose of the militia. For a quick like background on that, the reason they valued a militia is because a big threat to a democracy was a centralized army. They thought a centralized army was the biggest threat to freedoms of Americans that they could conceive of. So one of their solutions to that was having a militia. So each state would maintain their militia, and during times of like crisis, let's say if England were to invade again or something, you can call up the localized militias and then organize them through a federal body. That was the idea, to avoid the need for a federalized military, a thing we obviously have now. So like that was sort of the point. And it was important to those states in order to maintain the level of autonomy that they conceived when joining the union, that they would be able to have those rights respected, particularly in slave states where the militia and having like citizens armed was important for keeping slaves in check as well. So it was a thing that all the states valued for like different reasons, but like the collective reason for like the founding fathers, almost none of them were like this weird individual right argument. It was a pragmatic argument about keeping and maintaining a standing army would be very expensive and could run risks, particularly to the autonomy of the states. Once again, I don't necessarily agree with this now, but like this was their perspective back then, and you and I are arguing about their perspective back then.
Wait, so you are aware that the Second Amendment at the time meant that the federal government was not allowed to take away arms from any citizen, right? Meant that the federal government was not allowed to take away arms from any citizen, right?
That is not true to my understanding. What is your source for that?
No, like you just said that it was so that states could maintain their own militia, right?
Yeah, so the federal army couldn't tell states that they can't arm their citizens. They need to be able to like have arms in order to maintain their militias for their variety of reasons, right? To quell insurrection, to serve if they're facing a foreign invader, to keep slaves in check. It was all of these reasons collectively.
Yeah, but once again, do you not now wait. I don't know how to phrase this, but the is can you give me an instance where an individual has been deprived, or sorry, wait 1 minute, let me rephrase this properly.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah. So this is my question. Oh, do you think that people, let's assume that there's a person who is in service in the militia and then later leaves service from the militia.
Mm.
Can the federal government deprive him of his right to keep and bear arms? Like, let's
Um,
assume he's in the reserve or he's off duty. Can the federal government deprive him of his right to keep and bear arms then?
Usually that's a state government would be doing it, but yeah, they
No,
could.
I'm asking about the federal government because at the time, wait, let's get one thing clear. At the time, states could pass any gun control laws they wanted to. You understand that, right?
Yeah, because once again, the Second Amendment was a not like it's never been like an individual right. So it's the states. If the states tell you can or can't own a gun, they're allowed to do that.
Okay, now I think we have a bit of the similar position here. So you understand that, like as I brought up selective incorporation before, this law then after selective incorporation, this law then prevented states, basically gave states the same power as the federal government with respect to guns, and that neither of them could take away guns from an armed populace, right?
Well, it's that you couldn't do. Well, you could do that anyway. So the federal government could pass laws. Like I think some of the Supreme Court cases we looked at. Let's check it out. I think it was
Wait, which Supreme Court case?
as a U.S. v. Miller, maybe, or was it the other
No,
one?
US v. Miller was regarding shotguns. Now, sorry, not shotguns, automatic guns. Now, you are aware automatic guns don't come under the definition of arms, right?
What?
Are you aware that automatic guns, machine guns, do not come under the definition of arms?
Why would they not come under the definition of arms?
Or do you know what the definition of arms is? Guns that are used for.
Hold on. There is
Uh,
no. There is. Hold on. Let's clarify here, okay? So there's no static definition of what it means to bear arms, okay? What exactly qualifies as an arm is up for interpretation as any other statement you want to make about this. So just telling me I can't include assault rifle or sorry, like machine guns as a weapon is a ludicrous statement. Like you're just drawing the caveat here. There's no reason we need to make.
wait, so then by that logic, arms includes any weapon under the sun, does it?
Well, you see, that's the thing. We have to draw something. We have to draw
No,
lines somewhere.
I'm telling you the definition that courts use. Courts use arms as guns that are used for civilian purposes.
Uh-huh.
This is why, like, you can't own a machine gun or like nuclear weapons because they are not guns. They are not used for civilian purposes. Guns like pistols and the, or what do you call it, shotguns, they are used for civilian purposes.
What's a civilian purpose for owning a gun?
So, as in self-defense or property defense.
But that's not really what like if we're going back to the Second Amendment intent. Like when they're saying why you should own guns, there are some people you can find instances where they talk about, protecting like your personal property. So that is like one, that is sometimes referred to, but that's not, from my understanding, a common a common understanding of the purpose of owning guns and the 18th century. So yeah, that
No, but I'm talking about the definition of arms here.
Yeah, but like okay, so you could say that the court is making up this distinction, but like once again, like they're making these arbitrary distinctions that are not present within like that context. So if the states wanted people to have guns to serve in a militia, why would
Yeah, well, this definition evolved over time because.
calm down, buddy. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to say here is if we're talking about their initial intent to serve in a militia, if you're going to be serving in a militia and the idea of the militia is to be able to engage in armed combat with an invading army, why would they restrict the most potent weapons at the time?
Well,
You're saying it was made
more developed weapons would be owned by the state, right?
I mean,
More developed weapons would be owned by the state, but we're talking about civilian ownership of arms.
yeah. So all I'm
We're
telling you
talking
is that
about.
this didn't grant like an absolute right to gun ownership. That was the original argument that we were having. Is that I'm telling you that the Second Amendment isn't like an absolute individual right that was conceived as a collective right for militias. and like we're not
No.
really disagreeing here.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the fact that arms is huge. Like you mentioned something about this about United States versus Miller, and that specifically
I might have cited the
talked
wrong
about
case.
automatic rifles. And automatic rifles do not come under the definition of arms and are therefore subject to any regulation that the government wishes.
Wait, this is about a shotgun, isn't it? Like the one I was thinking of was the shotgun, where they're just restricting. Like a shotgun's like a pretty common weapon for people to have in their houses, and this restricted people's ability to.
Oh, wait, sorry, I'm
own
going through the
shotguns.
case now, and it says, oh, oh yeah, it says here shotgun. Yeah, sorry, my mistake. It's talking about a shotgun here.
Yeah. So I was like, I could be misremembering this. I didn't look it up beforehand because we did this. I meant to read a little bit beforehand, but we said we're gonna do this in an hour. I'm like, whatever, that's fine. I don't really care. But yeah, this is about like the federal government's right to restrict like the availability of shotguns or the legality of using modified shotguns, which is what this is. Hold on, let me read this real quick. Pass outcry, St. Dalhousie massacre. Yeah, so their ability to restrict fully automatic firearms, short-barreled rifles, and shotguns. So like all of these things that we're talking about here could be used by like average people. This is not solely restricting firearms. And in this ruling, they talk about how they specifically refer to the Second Amendment purpose of the militias. So outside that context, the federal government was allowed to restrict things, particularly after the militia got rolled into the National Guard system. And I think it was sometime before this. I think it was like the early 20th or late 19th century where the National Guard system got created.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, I got the quote on the Dred Scott case. It's from Wikipedia, so like not the best source,
I
but
mean, that's Wikipedia's usually fine. I'll accept Wikipedia. It's okay.
wait, I'll share my screen for a second.
Yeah, so I'm reading. He had no rights that the white man. Oh, you gotta pull up. Follow me.
Wait, can you see my screen?
I cannot yet.
Wait, this is a bit of an unrelated question, but do you have any issue with like private gun ownership, like
No, I don't.
as a concept?
What my real issue is like I don't mind people having individual right to gun ownership, but I think that should be subject to basic regulations. So maybe you might not be like a Second Amendment crazy like a whole lot of the other people in America, but some people here think like the government has no right to do background checks. They can't do ERPOs, which are emergency removal protection orders. Like if you're threatening to kill your wife or you're threatening to shoot up a school, that we can take your guns from you. There are people who are opposed to that. This stuff is ludicrous, and they cite the Second Amendment as some absolute right to individual gun ownership, and it's like ludicrous. And this is precipice on some like ludicrous understanding of like the Second Amendment, and it's very ahistorical. Like I have no problem with saying like they probably didn't have a huge issue with people individually owning guns, but it just wasn't the initial intent. And like, have you lived in India your whole life, or were you in America at any point?
Yeah, I'm an American citizen. I was born there, lived there for 7 years, and then came back.
Gotcha.
Came to India, and then I'm gonna go back to America for college.
All right. So like I've spent my whole life like growing up here or whatever, so I'm like used to this like weird fiction that was created around like the guns are useful, so when we have to like overthrow a tyrannical government, like some people throw out quotes like from time to time the blood of tyrants and
the Jefferson quote.
Yeah. Like, and this is crazy. Like the idea that the founding fathers want us to have guns so we can overthrow the federal government is just ludicrous. They specifically in like Federalist 29, they talk about how like one of the reasons we're gonna have the militia is to quell insurrection. If thinking individuals or like small groups of people can overthrow their local government, if that's not insurrection, I don't fucking know what is. The founding fathers were not fucking insane. They were very functionalist, very very reasonable in many respects. Obviously I have disagreements with them, but yeah, like this is just crazy. What I really don't like is people being historical. So that's like kind of like where I was getting at here. Like I have no problem with the individual right to gun ownership, but acting like the Second Amendment exists in such a way where we can't like do common sense restrictions to make it
like by common sense you mean like depriving people who are like felons and mentally ill and like show show menacing threat. Like you can deprive them of the right to keep and bear arms. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, even like I'm even fine with like 30-day waiting periods and stuff like that. Like, I mean, there's plenty of other stuff you can do, but yeah, like
Yeah, that's a different discussion, though.
yeah, sure. I mean, I
Yeah.
agree with
So
you. I'm not
back
saying
to
they're
the.
bad. Like I said before, like you and I, like I don't have any issue with an individual owning guns. I don't care. What I don't like is people like trying to rewrite history for their own ends, and I think there's a lot of like American conservatism that does this, and it bothers me to no end. Particularly when like I even see like liberals generally accepting these premises, like and it's like very upsetting because I do think history is like valuable. We should understand it, and I see it being weaponized here as a way to like rewrite the founding fathers' intent for like all these like weird ways, and it comes off like I don't know if you're religious or not, but it comes off like almost biblical, right? They're telling you what the founding fathers intended, and like what the Constitution says, irrespective of what it actually says or what they actually thought. It's not meant in that way. It's meant to be taken like as gospel, and if you question this gospel, like you're sacrilegious. And I think that's like
Yeah. So
the problem I have.
I disagree with some parts there, but you're somewhat right. So back to the Dred Scott case. So here he says that like the Dred Scott case, right? It was about a slave Dred Scott who
Yeah, he like
who
fled the
wanted
north and everything
yeah
back his property.
yeah and so basically Roger Taney here was talking about that if Dred Scott were to be a citizen, he would have the ability to keep and carry arms wherever they went. Now, is there any other now? Do you believe that this is a varying interpretation of the Second Amendment from the time that the founders wrote it?
Um, yeah, I mean, so I mean that wasn't the case about the gun rights, but I mean I'd be willing to read like rest of his impression because like when I was going to use like court cases, I was going to talk about ones that specifically talked about the Second Amendment, and they generally reinforce the idea that it was a collective right, not an individual right. I mean, maybe Taney did say that, and I wasn't familiar with him saying it there, but I imagine like there's
Okay,
probably some more context to that.
then another question about the Second Amendment. When they say the right of the people, if the Second Amendment only applied to state militias, why didn't they just write the right of the militia to keep and bear arms instead of the right of the people?
I mean, there is rewritten versions of it. I had one up here before. Maybe I can get it real quick. Original text of the Second Amendment. I mean, why they made any decision, who knows, right? It could be hard because like they just like this wasn't one of the things they were like super duper concerned about. So like they just didn't write a lot about it. So it's kind of annoying. And like
No,
they
wait, are you talking about like they weren't? Wait, can you just repeat that last sentence?
What I was saying is that the founding fathers just like didn't really talk about the Second Amendment a whole lot. It just didn't come up that much. Like it just wasn't.
No, they did.
I mean,
They had debates numerous time about like editing commas and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they did take the Bill of Rights at least. Every comma and every word was debated numerous times. So I don't think that how do you say like they just flippantly wrote in the right of the people. I think they wrote it for a reason, which is that
I'm not saying
it was
flippantly. What I'm saying
yeah.
is that they hold on, I might have got one of them here. I'm not saying they did like flippantly. Like I'm sure they had a process to it. It's just like it wasn't like a super controversial thing. The idea that we should all have militias, right? So like or each state should maintain its own militia. Like in Federalist 29, the one I started talking about, like I think it's what's his name? I think it's Madison 29. And in it, he talks about like the militias necessary for a free state.
No, it's Hamilton. It's Hamilton, I think.
I think Hamilton wrote the other one. I think that one was. Oh,
no, he wrote.
Right, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. My bad. The dead old white people. I get them all confused, man. Madison.
Yeah.
46, I guess. I forgot what 46 was. I know he talks about the militia.
No, he wrote the one about taxes or something. 35, I think.
Yeah. Where is it? So your history starts Madison's first draft of the Second Amendment. Do we have?
Wait, can you share your screen for this?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Share screen. There it is.
Yeah, thanks. Wait, what is the specific part you were reading out?
I didn't read anything Oh, here's this first draft of the second. The right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-armed and regulated militia being the best security of a free country, but no person religiously scrupulous of bearing arms shall be compelled to render military service.
Yeah, once again, here it has the right of the people.
Yeah, but the people's a collective. That's not an individual thing.
Like, wait.
Like it's all
So
one thing there. Sorry, I'll highlight the part that I'm talking about here.
yeah, I know it, and I'm saying once again, like even though this was the first draft, the right of the people is something that stayed constant between this draft and like what we read today.
Yeah, but this makes it like kind of more clear what the intent was, right? Because it's a reversal of some of the worlds. So they shall not be infringed. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Isn't that the bad? And isn't that the end as a right? Because one of the arguments that Scalia makes when he's writing that is that he calls it a prefatory clause, right? He's saying that like this part, the well-armed militia shit. He's saying that like, well, that's saying why they have it, and then the second part is bestowing the right. And that the reason you have the right isn't really relevant to the right itself. That's what he's arguing. He goes, so like an analogy might be, I stole this from somebody. Like if I say like, hey, you can, I'm out of town, you could like, stay in my apartment. Like he's arguing that like, okay, whether you're saying I can go into your apartment, I can stay in your apartment. Like you.
But once again, like in this hypothetical, right? Me being able to stay in your apartment is conditional. Oh, sorry, it's limited. It's limited when you're out of town, right? Mm-hmm. The Second Amendment doesn't, is not, like, the Second Amendment is not going to end one day. So not a good analogy.
I mean, arguably it can, right? So they're saying, like, if my understanding is correct, they're saying, hey, you can own guns because we need them for a militia, right? Because we need them for a militia is the context that justifies the right. So you can own guns in service of a militia because we want to maintain a militia, right? Now, if we stop maintaining a militia, if everyone stops having guns and going to regularly trained, having like a trained militia, then the need for an individual right to gun ownership becomes irrelevant, right? That's why I use that analogy. Me being out of town is very, very relevant to you being allowed to stay in my house. If I'm no longer again, you can't sleep in my bed,
Yeah, as I've stated before, the militia is just the people. George Mason said here, the militia is just the people excluding a few public officers. So and that's said by George Mason, who was instrumental in writing the Second Amendment. So is it not clear what the author's intent was on the militia clause?
Can you say that? Hold on. You have a link to what you're talking about, so I can just read it real quick.
Yeah.
You said George Mason, right?
Yeah, here. So do you have a quote from any founder that says that the militia consists of only state constructed body or able-bodied men?
Yeah, is that what they're saying in 29 pretty much? That the militia is comprised of like able-bodied men to serve this purpose that can be called up and they're be regulated and trained or whatever?
29 says that they can call up, they can draft members of the militia to serve for the United States Army. It doesn't say anything within the context of the Second Amendment or private firearm ownership.
Oh, yeah. So it's not referring in 29. It's not referring to that, but it's stating out the express purpose of the militia and whatever. So it gives us context over what.
But that's the militia in reference to federal and state powers. Here we're talking about the militia in reference to ownership of firearms.
Yeah, I don't think you can extricate these from one another. I think they're intertwined purposely.
No, I'm not really sure of that because like, do you not think that George Mason and Hamilton would have had this discussion over, like, why is there a varying definition of the militia here and one in 29?
And what? I don't think you sent me a link.
Why is there a varying definition of militia as shown here? and a different one in Federalist 29.
So you haven't sent me the George Mason quote yet, so I don't.
Wait, I'm sharing my screen now.
I can't see your screen share. You just send me the link or whatever.
Yeah, wait, you can see it now, right?
Oh, maybe. Oh, okay, yeah, I can. Okay.
Yeah, so why do you think there is a varying definition? Wait, first thing, can you accept that there are varying definitions of the militia here and in 29?
Here and in 29.
In here and Federalist 29.
I don't think there's a distinction there because I think like they don't specify who makes up the militia in 29, do they?
Okay, then that makes my case better in as for who makes up the militia.
Well, no, I mean I agree with you that the militia was generally like most able-bodied people or whatever, from the founding. So I'm not disagreeing with you about that. It's just like now the militia isn't that, and we're not like there's not really going to be a future where we have a militia. If you need to perform military service,
yeah,
like, you can't really divorce this from like the time they were living in, right? We didn't have a large federal government the way we do. We didn't have a standing military that's bigger than the next like 9 militaries combined. We didn't have all this stuff. We do now. So like, and even the militia system, like you have the Militia Act of shit. Hold on, I can look it up real quick. 1 second. Militia Act. Whoops, Militia Act. National Guard. Well, yeah, it's the Militia Act of 1903, which is what rolled the state militias into the National Guard as we know it today. So
wait, you said 1903?
Yeah, 1903 is when the Militia Act of happened, which created the National Guard system, which created a National Guard system, which was functionally the military, so it kind of rolled it into that. And then the National Guard can get people who work technically underneath the governor, but can be called into active duty for the executive branch, i.e. working underneath the president in conjunction with our active armed forces.
Wait, are you aware that this was after selective incorporation?
Yeah.
So
the concept of time doesn't allude.
Wait, what? Wait, I want to get one thing clear. Did you believe when the Second Amendment was passed, or ratified, do you think that took away any right from the federal government to take away arms of people?
I think it stopped them probably from restricting, the outright ownership of like guns for the purpose of the militia. But I don't think it probably stopped them from restricting like specific guns. It just wasn't. I just don't think it was a relevant question at the time.
Fine. Let's assume that there's an individual in a state who is not part of a militia but has arms. Do you think that the federal government could take away arms from that person?
They probably could with a justifiable reason, I would think.
Well, then I have to go back to the Roger Taney quote.
I mean, I could be. I mean, I won't die on that hill. I just don't think it was like something they would. Like if they're just trying to restrict it from one individual, I don't think the state would care as long as the reason we're good, because the state's interest isn't in like ensuring an individual has guns, but to ensure a generic access to guns for the purposes of them training their militia and maintaining their militia. That's what they need. Now the federal government was.
I'm talking aside from the militia here.
I already said, like, I don't think you can separate these two concepts. Now, I'll throw in another caveat here. Just because I'm telling you the Second Amendment was written in the context of, like the militia, and that the capacity to own and like use guns was understood largely within that, not like necessarily restrictively. It doesn't mean that a given state can't pass a law saying like individuals can own machine guns or whatever. Or
once again, I said this before, right? Before selective incorporation in 18.
Sure, and I told you I don't think selective incorporation applies to the Second Amendment. I'm telling you the Second Amendment.
Wait, so you're telling me it applies for every amendment except the second?
Well, so you could say it applies to the Second Amendment. What I'm telling you is that like the intent of the Second Amendment wasn't like an individual right to gun ownership, and that the states can't restrict individuals from owning guns. It was like allowing the states to own guns for the purposes of maintaining a militia, and that the federal government can't restrict the state's ability to get and maintain weapons in order to have a militia. That the state can't do that.
Wait,
That's what it was.
if it was once again, if it was meant only for the militia, why did it say? Why does it not say the right of the militia? If it's a right that applies to the militia, why does it not say the right of the militia, not the right of the people?
Because there's plenty of things that just not expressly said like in the amendments.
So you're telling me that the founders debated this over and over again, but they forgot that a right that was like supposedly based around the militia, they forgot to write the right of the militia.
I mean, so if you're just being like very obstinate here, like you can read it and they're talking about the militia. Like I showed you the first version, and they're talking about the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed because a well-regulated militia, a well-armed and regulated militia being the best security of a free country. Like that's what they're saying here. Like they're really clear that these are two things intertwined, and you're trying to rip them apart. Like, oh, they didn't make it clear. Like this is pretty fucking clear what they're talking about in this original draft. When we go back to the current draft, I'd say the current draft is still pretty clear. Like, sure, they throw the shall not be infringed at the end. It's like, so, 2A nutters can scream that at me for no reason when I'm just like, hey, maybe infants shouldn't, have handguns. But like
no one's arguing that they should.
Sure, I'm making a joke there. Like I'm being a little flippant.
Yeah.
Well, the point I'm trying to make here is that they're like it's pretty clear what they're saying with this stuff here, and like to pretend that they're not talking about this, like the owning of guns within the context of this militia.
And once again,
it seems weird.
Like a militia is consisting of able-bodied men, right?
Uh-huh.
So any able-bodied men. Sorry. Any able-bodied man is able to own, has the right to keep and bear arms under this. Do you recognize that?
No, I do not.
Why?
Because it's not what it's saying.
Well, wait. So according to you, you say that the Second Amendment gives the right. Every able-bodied man in the militia the right to keep and bear arms. No. And then I tell... What?
No, I'm saying that the Second Amendment gave the states the right to maintain and arm militias.
Okay, why is that not anywhere close to anything that's being said here? Like, you're bringing in words that are nowhere close to being mentioned here. You realize that all the words I'm saying, the right of the people, it's all expressly given here, but you have to extrapolate from somewhere to justify your point.
Yeah, obviously. So this weird thing. So you're on like the Buckeye website or whatever you were looking at. Okay, you got rid of it. But like,
yeah, and you're on Salon.com. Oh, let's not attack sources here. You're literally on Salon.com.
So let me finish the fucking point I was making. The point I'm making is not that I give a shit about Salon. I'm telling you that's like a Second Amendment place. That this is an article talking about a point. You could disagree with it. What you're talking about is a website that's ripping quotes out of context. And you're quoting me the George Mason quote. I'm like, okay, I'm sure he said that. But like there's another quote that's used that's like, arms are the best thing to bring to like debate or something like that. I don't remember which founding father said it. And actually it's probably on that page. Hold on. Buckeye gun quotes. Let's see. Buckeye Firearms. Let's see.
Yeah, wait, so which quote did you have an issue with here?
I'm trying to see if they have it here. I'm sure it's here.
Like, and once again, all of these quotes, like, this is more of a philosophical point here, but all these quotes show that the founding fathers supported private ownership of firearms. Do you not understand that from this?
So when you ask, like, do I not understand that? It's like a very condescending thing to do, right? Like you're assuming that like this is the only possible interpretation.
Okay, I didn't mean to be condescending.
Yeah, it's but fine. Like I don't care that much, but I'm just telling you, like you're assuming your premise here by like the language you're using, and like that's what we're talking about. You're not allowed to like have a debate and like assume the premise. It's a pretty annoying thing.
Wait, but in a debate, are you not supposed to be convinced of your own premise?
You could be convinced of your own premise, but you're assuming your conclusion, not like what's it called, like supporting
You realize that happens in every debate. Everyone is convinced that they're right. That's why the debate takes place in the first place.
Whatever. So what I'm telling you is that like reading quotes with outside of like the context and the other stuff that they meant from it is like it means nothing. Like it's not nothing, but can very easily obfuscate what their meaning was. Ripping quotes like this is a very bad way to understand like intent, and the reason it's bad to understand intent is because like this one sentence outside of like what they're saying it for, what they're doing it, or like or the other debate that's happening in that context, or what the plurality of opinion was, or like whatever, can obfuscate what you're trying to do. So the reason I asked you in the beginning, like, what makes a good way to understand original intent of something, right? If we're trying to understand a historical event or historical meaning of something, what should we do? And my argument is basically, or the point I was going to make was that just taking quotes devoid of their context is meaningless. So like you're correct to point out that like me just saying like, oh, I'm going to dismiss these quotes is at least half true. What I'm saying is that these quotes in and of themselves don't mean stuff outside of their context, and that we need
So, what do you propose as an alternative to understanding?
Well, I think a good way is to look at like their conception of it at the time, like in practice. The further we go back in time, and we have people interpreting that and writing about it and understanding what the Second Amendment meant, the more likely.
So, wasn't Roger Taney writing what he did?
So Roger Taney can
writing about
whatever he wants, which is fine. So when I'm talking about like the court writing about the Second Amendment, I'm not talking about like the Dred Scott decision, which had nothing to do with the Second Amendment apart from this one-off line you're referring to. So when we're talking about like, okay, when the Supreme Court was met with these questions on the Second Amendment, I had 4 cases where in each one of the cases they reaffirmed it as a collective right for the states for militias. And those were all after the 13th, 14th Amendment that we were talking about. They were all understood in that context. That's what I'm telling you. And we can go back to a historical record. We can look at like legal historians and shit. I had some articles here as well. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Let's close some of this shit. Do I have the article here? During our military context. I think it's this article. There's one that basically goes through like all the writings about the Second Amendment for like a 90-year period, and like all the historical analysts, not just like the Supreme Court, because you had an issue with me citing the Supreme Court precedent that disagree with you, but all like the historical analysts at the time also interpret it as a collective right. So, like, you have to tell me that all these historians from, years past are wrong. All this Supreme Court jurisprudence are wrong. And they all could be wrong. Me just saying all these people said this thing doesn't mean they're right. But it's like, okay, you have people who dedicate their entire lives to being historians in this specific field or whatever, or being historians and looking into issues like this, and they're giving you an answer, and because you don't like that answer, you're disagreeing with it. I'm telling you, like, we can like this answer, we can dislike this answer, but that's what it is. I have no problem with the individual right to gun ownership being something we have in this country. I just don't like historicizing it beyond what historians generally agree upon was their intent, and using weird cherry pick quotes to like support an ahistorical like perspective.
Wait, so you're telling me that historians, i.e. secondary sources, are better than primary sources?
Yes, for the layman, yes, they are, because you and I are not, historians. I'm not. I'm not a historian. My master's degree is in criminal justice. This is just something I read about in my free time a little bit, but I don't really have the tools or the training in order to interpret stuff that was said in decades and decades and decades ago. Like, you and I don't understand the historical or moral norms at the time. We don't understand how language is necessarily used. Like, language is constantly evolving. So understanding how they thought about stuff is very different. That's the entire historical discipline. To act like we can look at a primary source devoid of context is like going to willfully obfuscate their meaning to you. You could read it, and that's fine. But like when a historian tells you, like, okay, well, here's how I'm contextualizing this, because that's like the sources I'm looking at are doing. They're saying, okay, well, we have this and these other meanings and how this was interpreted and what these words meant at this point in time and all these other points that you need to make in order to understand what they were saying. Because if you and I went back, 250 years right now, we just showed up in like the halls of Congress or whatever when they're drafting this shit, and we start talking to them, we're not going to understand what they're saying. Like, you and I both speak English perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But we're
And
not
so to
gonna be
understand
reading
what they're
people.
saying, do you not think that primary sources would be the best thing to use?
So a primary source is just someone saying a thing. So no. Because
Yeah, and then you use it to understand what they wrote.
Wait, no. You can't independently do that without lots and lots of training. So when I'm telling you the secondary sources, that's what they're doing. We're talking about the historian's process. The historian is not just making this up. They're looking at those primary sources. They're looking at relevant, related other primary sources, and they're using all that to weave to weave a historical narrative that makes sense in context. So yeah, the secondary sources are what we should pay attention to here because they're interpreting those primary sources in a way that makes sense to us as normal people.
Okay, now you realize that this person's secondary source is dependent on which primary sources he got, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we could just say like, oh yeah, they messed up their interpretation. Like, you could do that, but like, I haven't even said a specific source. So you can't even like attack that, can you?
Yeah, but does this person have any primary quotation or source that he's? Wait, can you just link me this paper?
Yeah, sure.
Because I want to see if this person has any primary source that he's used.
I don't know if I have this case here. Oh, actually, it's in this folder. That's what it is. And it's one of these, I think. I think it's this one. Just give me 1 second. I think it's this one.
Wait, do you go to college?
Yeah, I have a master's degree.
Oh, which subject? Criminal justice.
Yes, sir.
Oh, which state?
Florida.
Oh, nah. So are like things opening up for you there?
Yeah, man. Like, everything's open. People don't wear masks here at all. It's wild.
No, but like most of you are vaccinated now, so it should be fine.
They asked you what?
Most of you are vaccinated, right?
I think our vaccination rate's like 36% or something. It's too low to be like this reckless, but I mean, we have like a very virulent like anti-vaxxer like coalition in this country right now, and people just not giving a shit. It's pretty annoying.
Like I would assume that the anti-vax coalition's more than like 20% at max.
Yeah, but there are plenty of people who haven't done it for like a whole host of reasons. Did this not download? Like, what is this thing doing? I'll just share the article with you directly. I think this is the thing, but I mean, I know you can't read it right now, which is totally fine. So this is a guy writing about. He's doing like a meta-analysis of like other analyses that were done from. I think it's the years written here. I think it's 1883 to 1960. So he looks at all the writing on the Second Amendment from that point and like what their understanding of it was.
Yeah, wait, I'm just going through it now. 1 minute.
Sure, let me kind of real quick too.
Okay, now I think there's one issue that I have with this on page 4 of this article.
Mm-hmm.
So it says that the first article to advocate the individual right came in 1960. Now, I'll find the court case which affirmed the individual right back then, but the NRA was founded in 1871 and they've been advocating the individual right since.
No, they have not. That's not correct. So the NRA has like a weird history. They've only been like crazy the way they are now for like a much shorter period of time. I know they were behind that whole like revisionist thing or whatever, but their initial thing supported gun control. I don't. Maybe you're right that they support.
But are you talking about that California situation with the Black Panthers?
Not specifically, no.
Oh, no, because that's often used as like a smear against them.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of things to smear them about. I don't think that's. I mean, that just shows how they're like hypocrites or whatever. I mean, you can do the same thing for Reagan because he's the one who signed that into law.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, they generally supported gun control and responsible gun ownership for their like early history. I think they hopped onto that train you're talking about, but I don't think they were. I wouldn't die on this hill necessarily, but I don't think they supported an individual right of gun ownership in that context. From their founding, I don't think that's correct.
No, but do you not think that people, like, once again, even Roger Taney, like, as bad as you may see him, even he stated that the individual right was a thing in 1857. So do you not think that that stating that the first article advocating for the individual right came in 1960 is like verifiably false?
I mean, I don't think so.
So you're telling me that the first person to advocate for the individual right came in 1960, like.
So I don't think he's saying the first person. Hold on, he says
Roughly.
He says on page 4 of that article, right?
Yeah, roughly 170 years after the Second Amendment was written.
So he's saying for nearly a century, unless we're talking about a different page 4 here. 1, 2. Wait, is it page 4 of the PDF or
Page 4 of the PDF, yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that's what. So what he's saying there is the first article in a legal journal to advocate for this was in 1960. Now, I could be wrong.
Yeah, because. Wait, I'll just share my.
So that's not saying. I'm looking at it right now. So it says the first article advocating the individual right interpretation appeared in 1960, titled "The Right to Bear Arms." So when it's saying article, it's talking about like scholarly articles in like journals and stuff. So it's saying this article is titled "The Right to Bear Arms: A Study in Judicial Misinterpretation." It was a student article in William and Mary Law Review. So he's talking about articles. The first article advocating for individual right was published in the William and Mary Law Review. That's what he's saying. He's not saying there weren't people who made this argument. In fact, there are people who definitely did make this argument, right? The previous Supreme Court cases, he actually says it in the page before this too. He says, subject to for nearly a century, the collective right model remained widely accepted but uncontroversial. Well, from time to time, Second Amendment challenges were raised to ordinance or court orders restricting possession of firearms. The courts relied on the Supreme Court's 3 opinions. So basically what he's saying is there were people who did have the view that you're staking out here, but the only like law review consensus or articles arguing in this favor, the first one appeared in 1960. That's what he's saying. There weren't people who were like lawyers or historians or who wrote legal articles making this argument until 1960. And the point he's making after this is that after 1960 is where you saw a flurry of articles arguing for this individual right instead of a collective right.
But are you aware that court stated that the individual right was a thing before 1960?
The courts said it was an individual right before 1960?
Yeah. Wait, I'm just sharing my screen here.
I am not aware of that. I mean, everything I'm seeing here indicates the opposite, right? I mean, he's citing right here the like 3 different court decisions affirming it as a collective right for the militia. So you're telling me courts have affirmed this, but like this is telling me in the exact opposite. So like that's what I'm saying. Like you're saying, are you aware of that? And then you're making a claim that's not correct.
Yeah. No. So your source implies that that like the individual right theory only became something that was seen since 1960.
So,
but
what he's saying is that it only gained some like degree of recognition in a law review in 1960. This is different than saying that people believed there was an individual right to gun ownership. It's saying that it only gained ground and was published in a law review in 1960. Ostensibly,
well, that can be for a variety of reasons, though, because maybe like there wasn't much debate about whether it was an individual right, and only when the debate came up, they decided to reaffirm it as an individual right in 1960. Because there are if there are courts affirming.
He says this, right? Like the paragraph before this, he's talking about it, right? Hold on. Let's see. For nearly a century, the collective right model remained not only widely accepted but uncontroversial. While from time to time Second Amendment challenges were raised in ordinance, the court order restricting possession of firearms, the courts relying on the Supreme Court's three opinions. Professor Spitzer covered in the course of his work and symposium. From the time of law review articles first began to be indexed in 1887 until 1960, all law review articles dealing with the Second Amendment endorsed the collective rights model. So what he's saying here is every article in like legal law reviews from when they were published and composed from 1887 until 1960 endorsed a collective rights model. And it was only in 1960 that the first one showed an individual right. That is what he's saying. That's it. That is the only thing relevant to that. Sure, you can come up with many reasons why that might be the case, but like at the end of the day, the historical and the legal consensus was a collective right. That's my point.
Wait, I'll just share my screen 1 second. I have something.
Sure. This is a 200-page article, my friend.
What?
I said it's a 200-page article.
Right there. Wait. I saw a quote from this that there are, however, I'm pretty sure that there will have been I find the 1960 year very skeptical because I don't think that it's something that just randomly came up in 1960.
I mean, so like your incredulity is noted, but I'm just telling you, it just doesn't mean anything. Like we could try and go through these articles. Like you could try and go through the articles. I think they list it in the Spitzer article he's talking about. I actually think I do have that one too. I think I got that article as well. I think it's this one. Yeah, okay. So look at my screen share on this one. He goes over the cases. So he lists like all the cases here. Now, it's possible that he just missed a journal article or something, or a law review where it was mentioned. I mean, that is possible, but I wouldn't say it's likely. And we're talking about a finite list here, you know? I mean, I'm sure, I doubt, like, nowadays, like, there's so many journal articles that get published all the time. I'm sure back in, like, 1887 or whatever they started tracking this, that it was, there probably weren't as many law reviews, probably weren't as many law schools, they probably didn't publish as regularly, so I'm sure there was probably not as many to go through as you'd imagine. Yeah, I mean, like you could
I don't know,
find
but I'm still skeptical on the 1960 or do you not think it's basic common sense that someone would have advocated for the individual right theory before then?
So you might argue that it's common sense that someone would argue with it, but like once again, you're begging your conclusion here because it's not common sense. It's common sense. It's hard.
There are numerous court decisions regarding it. Do you not I'll find the paper 1 second.
Yeah.
I'll find.
If you're studying the court cases, like I went to the Supreme Court cases. I'm sure there's more federal court cases or whatever that just didn't get like appealed or whatever, didn't get successfully appealed because you can appeal a case. It doesn't mean the Supreme Court's going to hear it, but the ones the Supreme Court has heard during this time frame seem to affirm the collective right. So if you're going to appeal to that, like, I think.
Wait, can you show me one of the cases? Oh, can you tell me one of the Supreme Court cases affirming collective right?
I think Robertson v. Baldwin's one of them. Let me hold on. It says it in this article too. It says it in one of these articles as well. Yeah, I got way too many fucking tabs open. It's time to fix this real quick. I think it's listed in this one. 1876, 1886, 1939.
Wait, Robertson v.
Oh, okay. So Presser v. Illinois is one of them. There you go.
Yeah, wait, Presser v. Illinois. Wait, Presser v. Illinois affirmed the individual right. Like I have the Wikipedia page here, it says the court ruled the Second Amendment was the right of individuals, not militias.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Wait, I'll just share my screen one second. Wait, can you unshare yours?
You want me to unshare mine?
Yeah. So then you can see mine.
Done.
Wait, something's wrong. Is Discord always like this?
No, it might be just because we're far away. I can try and change the server real quick if you want. Oh, never mind. We're already in the Indian server. Huh.
Yeah. Wait, can you see now? Yeah. It says the court ruled that the Second Amendment was the right of individuals, not militias. And once again, it says who could serve as members. So your ability to keep and bear arms is not conditional of your participation in a militia. You have it regardless. Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I mean, this law review is saying that it's the opposite conclusion. Let's try and find a third source on this one.
Wait, what article did you have on this case?
Well, I'm not reading the actual conclusion, but it says it like in the first paragraph or two of I think both articles that I sent you.
Wait,
the one by Carl.
Can you share yours?
Yeah, I think it's the one I copy and pasted. Yeah. So I mean, we could try and look into this a little bit more. Let's give it a shot. You want me to screen share? Is that what you wanted, or you wanted me to?
Wait, I think this case seems really messed up because I'm going to another website and they're giving like a completely different or different interpretation, like account of what happened in this case.
What are you saying? Say that one more time.
I'm going to another site and they're giving like a completely different account of what happened in regards to this case. Like they're saying pressers about the state government for some reason. But I don't think like in neither of the articles, Presser never reinforced the collective right in either of them.
So I'm reading another website here. It's from Constitutional Law Reporter. I've never been on this website before. It looks kind of legit. Whatever. So Supreme Court decision. I think that Wikipedia article just seems wrong. So in that one law article I read, which I took at face value, indicated the opposite. So the court upheld the Illinois statute. We think it clear that the sections under consideration, which only forbid bodies of men to associate together as military organizations or to drill or parade in arms with cities and towns and weapons of war, do not infringe on the right of people to keep and bear arms.
Yeah, and this goes back. This is regarding the discussion whether the Second Amendment applied to the federal government or all levels of government. Now, this would change after McDonald versus Chicago and DC versus Heller, where you had selective incorporation onto all, how do you say, onto all levels of government.
I have to look at the years of 13, 14, and 15, but in 1876, the
No,
Second Amendment.
but that's not selective incorporation. Like, it's not like the Second, the 14th Amendment was passed, that, what do you call that? Like, all these rights were incorporated.
Yeah.
You need the Supreme Court to reaffirm that right.
So you can make that argument, but the Supreme Court never affirmed that right in the manner in which you're describing, anyway. Probably would have been
Like, once again,
they didn't opt for that. They never made that argument. I feel like if they could reasonably make that argument,
like you cited this case, and this case doesn't have anything to do with the collective right at all.
Yeah, it does. I like just read it to you. I'll read it to you again if you want.
No, this case is just about whether about the fact that state governments could ban private citizens from owning firearms, and that, like, I'm not disputing they could do that until McDonald versus Chicago and like selective incorporation happened.
But hold on, let me backtrack. Where did this start from? So this started from us talking about, okay, the progress of this area that we're at right now happened when you saw that one article said that there were no cases before 1960, and I said, yep. And you're like, that's not possible. And I said, okay, well, let's see what they're talking about here. And then we went down that rabbit hole. And I said, okay.
Yeah, and I'm saying this case has no relation to the individual right, collective right theory.
Hang on. Yes, it does. So this case, what I said is that there were Supreme Court cases that affirmed the collective right of gun ownership, and you're telling me they're irrelevant now, which is an argument you can make, but that's a separate point from what we were debating. So
no, I'm saying this case in specific has nothing to do with the collective and individual right.
And you're wrong about that, which is fine, and I'll explain to you. So I'll read. I have you screen shared on the case right now. Like, I'm looking. We're both looking at it, or you can look at it on my screen if you want. But so the case was, there was a law in Illinois that said it prohibited parading with arms by groups other than organized militias. Okay, and they challenged it as unconstitutional. The Supreme Court's decision. So that Wikipedia page is just wrong. It's probably fucking rewritten by fucking Second Amendment crazies. Okay, they do that. They're wild. It's out of control. But
but this is involving the state government. See, I'm not saying. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that the case says what I'm saying. What I believe. I'm saying the case does not say what you think it says. This this case
making a claim here. I'm claiming that, like, this legal scholar said that, and now I'm just reading you the words of the Supreme Court justice here. You know, and you can tell me, hey, I'm being a hypocrite here, right? I said you can't read primary sources, but like, hey, this one seems pretty clear, and a secondary source analyzing it agrees with me, and that this is all understood as underneath the collective rights framework. So this court held here that the statute under consideration is legal because it pertains to it's legal to restrict people from owning guns except within the context of a military organization, that they're allowed to do that, which is a collective right argument. That's 100% what that is. There's like no way around what we're saying right here.
And also, this case does, like, if you read like from below where your cursor is, where it says Supreme Court's decision, it says it's only talking about associating together, and it's not talking about the right to keep and bear arms. Only the association and training. That's what this case is talking about.
It's saying that you can't, like, that they have the right to ban people from parading with arms,
training together
than organized militias.
Yeah, from parading and training together, parading and training with arms. It doesn't say anything about the ownership of arms.
So they're talking about individuals' ability to, like, own guns and, like, wander around with them or whatever, okay? And they're talking about whether those
they're talking about numerous individuals, right? Or group together and drill or parade with arms.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with whether the Second Amendment is an individual or collective right.
Well, yeah, it does, because they're reaffirming it's a collective right. If it were just this individual right that you're talking about, this court couldn't find this way, right? If it was an individual right to own guns, like, for example, a lot of states passed what's called constitutional carry, which allows people to just openly carry fucking arms, right? This is what this law is specifically going against. Now, constitutional carry is a marketing gimmick, like, whatever. But the point being, that's that idea. If you had the individual right to own guns and carry guns with you whenever the fuck you wanted, then this would go against that. This is talking about how the rights are understood in this collective framework. This is a collective understanding of this right. I get your point. They're not making a specific claim on an individual right of gun ownership. They're talking about the ways you can restrict gun ownership in a way that many people would disagree
with. This just restricts collectivizing and drilling. It has nothing to do with ownership.
The Supreme Court
there is no gun. There are no guns being confiscated in this case. It's just saying they cannot group together.
I did not say it had anything to do with confiscating guns. Illinois didn't choose to ban guns. The individual right to gun ownership is not it's more than just that. And what they're doing here is the Supreme Court answers specific questions, and they were answering here: does this violate the Second Amendment? And the answer was no. And this is a restriction on people's ability to individually carry arms in the context in which they can do it. I get what you're saying, that they're doing this within the context of you can't walk down the street with guns. They're not banning specific guns or whatever. There are other cases where they do ban specific guns, saying this doesn't violate the thing. And here,
wait, can you repeat that last part? That they ban specific guns.
So there are other cases where they banned specific guns or whatever. So that 1939 case, they banned what was it? Automatic weaponry. They banned shotguns, certain shotguns, and certain rifles.
But what? I already told you how that doesn't come under the definition of arms, but here, this has nothing to do with the...
You said it didn't come under the definition of arms, and you said specifically assault, automatic weaponry, but that 1939 case...
Read the third sentence of this passage. It says that all the given law do not infringe the right of people to keep and bear arms. So people still have the right to keep and bear arms. They just cannot do so together in a group. That's all this case is saying. It does not say that you can confiscate their arms if they're owning them individually.
You're just not understanding what's being said in this case, which is the problem. I don't know how to make this more clear. You're just looking for anything here.
No, you're not understanding it either. You're not understanding that they are saying that this is a law regarding people organizing with guns, not people owning guns.
So you're telling me that the legal articles or the legal things talking about this and analyzing this case just completely missing.
I'm telling you what's given on screen. Let's talk about what's on screen. They are addressing the law from the perspective of people organizing with guns. And they are saying that do not infringe the right of people to keep and bear arms.
Okay. I'm trying to think of this. So the reason this is endorsing a collective rights model versus an individual rights model is because it's telling them it's specifying that the states are allowed to restrict firearm ownership within the context of the militia. That's part of their ruling here.
They are not restricting firearm ownership. They are restricting people gathering with firearms. People are still owning firearms. They're saying that this does not...
Hold on. You're not understanding, okay? So I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying right there. But in talking about it, they're making clear...
No, I don't think you do.
...of the Second Amendment. I do. I understand what you were saying. You were saying that they're just restricting people from, making their own little mock militia and then wandering around doing parades and shit. That is what you're talking about. And that they didn't explicitly take away people's individual right to gun ownership. And I'm telling you, yes, but that doesn't affirm an individual right to gun ownership. What that does is tell you that they're analyzing this under a collective framework of the Second Amendment, giving them that right, so the state can restrict this in this manner. They're answering a specific question. They're not just saying it's a collective or individual right. You have to analyze what their conclusion is and what they're saying, and then determine if it's an individual or collective right, which is what they're doing.
No,
they're telling you.
But that's what I'm saying. This case doesn't deal with that conflict at all. It's dealing with whether a state has a right to ban people from organizing with arms, which here the court says that it does. This does not affirm the collective right theory because it does not deal with the collective right theory or the individual right theory.
It is dealing with the collective right theory. It's talking about how guns are
Oh,
a collective right that they're allowed to, the states are allowed to
there is
regulate with respect
no
to maintaining their militia.
there is
That's what
no
it's talking about.
confiscation of guns going on here. It's just about organizing with guns.
The collective versus individual right argument doesn't necessarily have anything to do with confiscating guns. It has to do with regulating
It
the
does.
use of arms in one way or another, and who is allowed to.
The collective rights theory, the collective right theory states that gun ownership is earned as part of service in a militia. Here they are saying that the court is simply.
You don't even understand the argument that you're criticizing. The collective rights theory is saying that the militia, the Second Amendment, is understood as a collective right. That it doesn't say that you can only earn your right to own a gun by working in a militia. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that at all. Okay, so
That's what the collective right theory is.
No, it's not. You're just not correct here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look it up. Collective right of gun ownership theory. Because what you're saying is crazy. It's like no one can have the right to own a gun unless they worked in a militia. Do you think that's what the collective right argument is?
Well, that's what people who endorse the collective right say, that the right to own a gun only comes as a result of participation in a militia.
They can grant you that gun otherwise. What it's talking about is that the rights of gun ownership within is guaranteed to the states in the context of maintaining a militia. Okay, it's just saying that the states can't be infringed in that respect. That is the argument that's being made. Okay, that the Second Amendment doesn't explicitly or even implicitly guarantee an individual right to gun ownership. That is what it is saying. It's not restricting people's right to individually own guns. It's just saying it's not answering that question at all. That is what the collective model is saying. That it's not answering that individual right. That is what it is saying. And if we can't agree on that, then there's not a whole lot more to say here. Because you're giving a very constricted version of this that doesn't make any sense. Because I've never heard anyone argue. Well, I'm sure there probably are people who would make that argument who really hate guns. But in terms of whether you like guns or don't like guns, I don't really care. But we're talking about the collective right theory. It's it's just talking about what their intent was of the Second Amendment. And that's it doesn't mean
you gave Presser versus Illinois, and that had nothing to do. Take this. Presser is not cited here for the reason that it does not deal with this conflict.
It's weird that the legal scholars disagree with the precedent it's establishing with you then.
In which case, in Presser.
What just happened? Have you ever read Presser v. Illinois until just now?
Well, it seems like you haven't, because you thought it endorsed the collective right theory when I just read this for a few seconds and realized that it didn't.
Okay, so I'm going to point this out. So you need to just never do this in life ever again. And
what
you're doing is assuming you can just read this real quickly, make this assessment.
Wait, then how was I able to read this in a few seconds and disprove everything that you thought about this case?
Because you weren't. That's the problem. You just.
What do you mean? Because I wasn't.
Is that you're very, very full of yourself, and I mean this in a humbling way. I'm not trying to be a dick here, but there's no other way for me to put this other than you thinking you could just read this case and understand the crux of a legal argument being made.
I read out the case for you word by word, and then you had to you stood silent for 20 seconds and then started talking about something else. My point is, Presser versus Illinois does not say what it does not deal with the conflict at all.
It does. You just don't understand.
It does not.
Talking about. Okay, so legal scholars disagree with you on this. Historians who study Second Amendment generally disagree with you on this. Except for the.
Then why did we just read the case off there? And I said that,
and I understand what you were reading. This is what I'm talking about. You don't have the ability to contextualize. So actually, this goes back. This is actually an excellent example of the point I was making before. Were you reading the Second Amendment? You reading founding father quotes out of context makes even less sense. Right? Because we're going back even another 100 years.
Wait. Stick to Presser for a second. Once again, I told you that Presser was just about people organizing with guns. And then you somehow make that about the collective right theory. Presser does not deal with the collective right theory in any way whatsoever. So, you haven't even showed me a single website where it says Presser affirms the collective right theory. Can you show me that, please?
Just did, you fucking this is
where?
Very, very frustrating. Literally,
where does it say
there is such thing as an unsettled. There is If there is such a sole constitutional law, the Second Amendment may have been its quintessential example. The Supreme Court addressed the amendment 3 times in 1886, 19, all these years, held that it granted the people the right to bear arms only within the militia.
Now, once again, is this not what I said about the collective right theory? That your right to bear arms only comes within participation in the militia.
Oh my God, you're not understanding what it's saying either. That's incredible.
No, wait.
Hold on. Do you think that
on each occasion held that it granted the people a right to bear arms only within the militia? When I said that this was what the collective right theory means, you said no, this is not what it means. I said exactly this.
So let's clarify real quick. Do you think?
So now I'm getting like you're being fucking stupid here. Like I said exactly this in regards to what the collective right theory is, and you said no, that's not what it is. Are you sure you know what you're talking about?
So let's clarify. When you said that, did you mean that? So when I clarified it, what I said was that the Second Amendment only grants you the right within the militia. When I restated,
yeah, and that's exactly what I said, and you said I was wrong.
Okay, so I thought you meant that you only have the right to own guns within a militia.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
As in, without being in a militia, you do not have a right to. You cannot own guns.
No, I meant that you have a right to own guns, but only within the militia. In that any other right outside the militia is subject to other government laws.
My mistake. I misunderstood you. So that's my bad. So I misunderstood what you were saying. I thought you were saying that the people argue collective rights say that you can't own a gun outside.
Yeah, that's like subject to other government laws. But right. my point about Presser is that it doesn't deal with either of them. So Presser doesn't deal. So Presser just deals with people gathering with guns, not with the collective or the individual right.
So I'm sure we could probably read through the whole decision maybe, or find people like reading through it to better contextualize it. But what I'm telling you, like here's what we have to accept. You and I are interpreting this differently. You're just telling me I'm de facto wrong, okay? And I'm telling you there's a reason this is ridiculous. And the reason I referred to the reason I went back to making the you just quoting founding fathers or whatever is that we need people who can contextualize this, okay? Like, lawyers and historians who understand how legal arguments are being made and what they're saying when they make things and how they're answering certain questions. So what I'm telling you is that legal scholars consider this a question pertaining to the Second Amendment in affirmation of a collective right.
Do you not think that there's a chance they could be wrong? Once again,
they could be wrong, sure. But then we need better things to say they're wrong. You're just telling me you could read this and tell me I'm wrong for believing these people when they say that it's a collective right. And when I read it, I can see how they understand it as a collective right. Because
fine. Explain to me. Explain to me how this affirms a collective right, if you can.
Sure. So the way I understood it from that little segment that I read of the decision, let me see if I can get it up here real quick again. Where the fuck did it go? There it is. So what they're talking about here is when they reaffirm that the Second Amendment grants it in this specific context, and because they reaffirm the context in which it's granted, that things outside of that context are allowed to exclude. So by affirming the context of within a militia, they're allowing the exclusion of things outside of the militia. That is my understanding of how it's reaffirming the collective right, because that thing falls outside of within the official state militia, hence why they're allowed to regulate it.
But do you not realize that
collective right?
Do you not realize that this case is only talking about them assembling and in no way talks about them owning, contents with their ownership of guns?
Yeah, but it doesn't have to do that to be talking about the collective right? So when it refers to saying yeah, sure, the state's allowed to restrict this because the Second Amendment's understood within regulating this militia, ergo what they're doing is fine. It's saying
let's understand one thing. Let's understand one thing here. In this case, we are restricting gatherings. We are not restricting the ownership of firearms, right?
It's restricting the context in which you can own firearms, I guess. So it's gathering with firearms, pertaining to be a militia, sure.
Yeah, it's restricting gathering with firearms, not owning firearms, right?
I mean, it says the amendment's being considered here too. Actually, that's pretty neat on this right side. I think. Am I wrong, or is it just listing them in order?
What?
I like this website. I think it's telling you the issues they were considering. Maybe. Hold on.
I think OEAs is a good site for that.
I don't know how to read this website. It's interesting. I don't like. It's listing these amendments out of order, so I imagine that they might be. Oh no, maybe just leaving out the third one. That wouldn't be applicable here. All right, I think it's just telling me the amendments. That's fine. Whatever. I mean, I don't know. I guess I understand your disagreement. It's just much more not clear than you think, and there seems to be historical precedent here. Sorry, I should say historical precedent. That's kind of a weird thing to say, but there seems to be a general agreement historically from like historical scholars and legal scholars when they write about the Second Amendment of what its context meant and what they are interred by it. I mean, so like this article here that's talking about like law review cases over like 70 years.
This is why I'm questioning like the credibility of these historians, because this case does not deal with the collective and individual right. It deals with gathering with arms.
I don't think you like. There's no other way to put it. Like you're not disqualified to make that claim. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm not either. So I'll grant you that.
But like,
I'm giving them a level of deference. I could see an argument for it. And maybe there's more I could read. Maybe even the argument I see for it's incorrect. That's definitely possible. Maybe there's a better way to understand this. Maybe I should read more of the decision. Maybe I should read a more than like 4-paragraph article thing on it. But I mean, this is generally understood as a Second Amendment case, not a gatherings case. Like the thing you just tried to say, this is not a Second Amendment case. Even the article you were looking at that said some weird affirmed an individual right thing on Wikipedia listed it as a Second Amendment case.
But like that's why I say Wikipedia is not too good of a source.
Yeah, I mean,
but
anyone can edit it. It's as long as it's relatively apolitical things, it can be okay, I guess. But I mean, we are dealing with a politically contentious issue here, so like, I mean, we could always read about this more. But what I'm saying is, like, you telling me this isn't a Second Amendment case now, that's one of the arguments you just retreated to, is kind of crazy.
No, I'm not saying that this isn't a Second Amendment case. I'm saying that see, our conflict is between the individual and the collective right. Mm-hmm. That is not being disputed or litigated here. What they are saying is preventing people gathering with arms. Is that a violation of the Second Amendment? And the court held no.
Whoops. Sorry, I dropped them. I'm sorry. Webcams are pain in my butt. Yeah, I mean, so I hear your argument and I understand what you're saying, and I'm just telling you that like apparently people generally disagree, like legal scholars. I understand the argument they're making, how it can confirm to a collective right. You don't have to be convinced by that, and that's fine, I guess. But like, that's just you just disagreeing with a whole lot of people and just telling me they could be wrong, and I like, they could be, they definitely could be, but like that's why I said like that's why I wanted to start this conversation with like that epistemological conversation. How do we know what we know? What's a better way of discerning things, right? And you seem to agree, or sorry, your position seems to be, you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, that look at primary sources, read what they said, and then just determine what they meant by how you interpret it. And I'm telling you that that's not a bad way.
Now a question.
What's up?
Are these historians that you're citing not doing the same thing?
Yeah, but you and I are not the same. Just as, sorry, our ability to read things in context is very different than than professionals' ability to read things in context. Is that correct? Would you agree with that? Yeah,
but let's assume that my reasoning is faulty. Shouldn't a historian be able to see through that?
Should a historian be able to see through your reasoning being faulty?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
So, do you not think that, like, if there is a mistake, as I'm claiming here, that his reasoning could also be faulty here? And, like, extrapolating a case that does not deal with the individual and collective conflict into one that, like, affirms the collective right.
So, just to be clear, this is not this person as the individual making this claim. I'm sure there are probably many, like, actually, the specific one I'm reading is citing another person who also said this. So, it's like at least two people here have said this now, right? and they like the law reviews that I don't know why I keep getting articles. I'm used to like talking about research articles because I deal with the social sciences, so talking about law reviews instead of like journals is just different for me. But like that's what they're referring to. So they could be wrong, but we're like talking about, well, who's more likely to be wrong? You know, if I pull a homeless person off the street and a PhD historian on Nazi Germany, who's more likely to give you an accurate like rundown of like the rise of the Nazi Party in Weimar Germany? You know?
Like the historian, but this is just an argument from authority, right?
Yeah, but there's a value in that, right? You can't just dismiss all arguments from authority. It doesn't mean they're necessarily right.
Yeah.
But we can make a
But
probabilistic
no, but
in terms of logic, you're
my
correct.
issue here is you're just like you're just like I'm trying to say why he's wrong, and you're just saying he's a qualified historian. That's an argument from authority.
Yeah, and I'm telling you that you're not. Yeah. This is a completely valid mode of argumentation, and the reason for that is because you want to, like I started this in the beginning, that I think like deference to relevant professionals is the best way to come up with accurate knowledge on a given topic. You would like, if we're talking about like, well, who's more likely to be right? Your doctor is like, telling you what's wrong with you, or like your aunt who thinks
Yeah,
she's
but
like
the
in touch
doctor,
with the devil.
you cannot find faults in the doctor's reasoning as easily as I am to find faults in this guy's reasoning.
Well, so you can make up any like faults you want. It doesn't mean like you're actually finding accurate faults in their reasoning. It's just
This is an accurate fault.
So you think it is.
Anywhere in this article, does it say that this case affirms the collective right? It doesn't, because it doesn't even deal with the collective right. Like, I'd be interested to see what other cases he has, because this case definitely does not even deal with the collective or individual right. So 1886 was the case that he.
If I had to ask you to grade, how certain are you that it doesn't deal with a collective or individual right?
100% sure.
Okay, well, that's a very stupid thing to say, right? Like, you shouldn't be 100% certain on anything.
You can call it a stupid thing, but you're not able to disprove my point that it doesn't deal with a collective or individual right.
Yeah, because to an extent, you're making judgment claims here on what they like say they're doing, what legal interpretations there are.
Like one thing you can
into this as well, but I'm telling you that so I would not say I'm 100% certain that that deals with collective right. I would say like I'm like 85, 95% sure or so, because you shouldn't be 100% certain.
Fine, then let's like I'm sure that it doesn't deal with the collective right. Like, how is me being sure bad?
Well, it's bad because it demonstrates like a lack of like intellectual curiosity in respect to like knowing what you can know and like knowing what you can't know and like placing probabilities on it. You read, I don't know if you read it yourself or you just read it off my screen when I was looking at it. This short version of this presser thing, which I wasn't particularly.
Let's see. You showed me 3 websites now, and none of them say the line, "This case affirms the collective right," because it doesn't even deal with the collective right.
That is not what. Hold on. So this thing right here, this.
For example, wait. I'll give you an example of what I'm asking for.
Review specifically said that that's what it's doing. And then we went to this website that talked about the case.
Yeah, and if you go to websites that talk about the case in specific, none of them say that. Like, this is what I'm asking for. If you go to the website for Loving v. Virginia, it'll say the Supreme Court affirmed that interracial marriage is a constitutional right. If you go to Obergefell v. Hodge, it'll say, the court affirmed that gay marriage is a constitutional right. None of these websites say that Presser affirmed that the Second Amendment is a collective right. There is no definitive statement that you get from each of these. I think I have to go in like 15 minutes, so let's finish this quickly.
Yeah, we can just wrap up. I mean, there's probably I didn't walk into this assuming we're going to reach some like clarification. Some like final conclusion, like, oh, you agree or I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we could just wrap up then. So
yeah.
I guess you go first. I guess make whatever your
arguments are. Thanks for having me on. Like, I got a bit heated here and there, but like that's just how I am. I felt that I learned a bit from this debate. Like, I came up and read through new cases that I hadn't seen before. So once again, thanks for having me on. If I was disrespectful or mean, I apologize. And uh, I guess I hope to speak more to you on other topics in the future.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and anytime you want, we can have a follow up on abortion or whatever you want.
Oh,
I don't think you're that. Both of us are way bigger dickheads on Twitter than we are
yeah.
on Voice.
Yeah.
It's probably for most people. I was like, oh, this kid's gonna be a pain in the ass, and then like, yeah, you were pretty cool.
Yeah. Thanks,
I
man.
had a good time. I hope you have a
Yeah.
wonderful night, and good luck with whatever you end up doing today.
Yeah. Bye.
Take care, man. I guess like I'll just include for like posterity. Nah, actually no. Just gonna end it. Keep my thoughts to myself. But he was a fun kid, a fun guy to talk to. I don't want to say kid. That sounds very condescending. Um, let's see. I do want to read more about this case. Actually, I guess I'll include some thoughts because maybe he'll watch the end of it or whatever. I do wish I don't think he's wrong. Like it was like I think I understood the argument they were making in this Presser v. Illinois case here. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I think I understood the argument they were making in Presser v. Illinois. But I understood what he was saying. Like, it doesn't make it clear. And what I was trying to explain was that there's no that I don't think courts generally make like very clear statements like that, and that to an extent it's up for like interpretation afterwards what they're talking about, how it's affirmed. And I think like I could see how this affirms a collective right. You know, they could take this case and make a separate conclusion about individual rights to own guns and like the expression thereof, and them saying like it's within the concept of militia makes sense. I do wish I had a little more time to like read up on these cases. I did intend when we finally nailed down a time. But this is my fault. I did tell him like just message me whenever and we could do it. And he's like, oh, half hour. I'm like, that's fine. And I just didn't have time to like read. I wanted to read these 4 cases, make sure I knew what each one was talking about. And I just didn't get a chance. I hadn't looked at it in like a few months. So I could have done better looking at that. I'm kind of annoyed that when we're having an argument over collective versus individual rights, I misunderstood something he said, but he said it in a very specific way, and I interpreted it wrong. And then I went off that interpretation. I said it back to him, and he agreed with it, but I used bad wording, which was my fault, and that's why we hit crosstalk there. And I was like, oh, I'm the asshole here because I misspoke. And I misinterpreted him, and like what he was saying was correct. He was correct with the collective right that you're only guaranteed the right to own guns within a militia. Now I'm saying it's from like a state level. I thought he was saying like from an individual level, like you only individually have the right to own a gun if you serve in the militia. And we meant the same kind of the same thing, but it's just like a specific language thing. And one of us crosstalked the other, and I think like I tried to clarify it. I didn't try it hard enough, and then I went off on the bad interpretation. I don't think appeal to authority is valid in that respect. It's sort of like saying when you appeal to authority, it's sort of like a logic statement. Like just because blank said blank doesn't mean it's correct, which at a technical level is true. You know, like someone can be a professional and say something that's wrong, just as like someone who's not a professional can say something that's wrong. It doesn't technically make it more correct, but like when you're dealing with real circumstances, professionals are more likely to make correct answers than wrong questions, right? Or sorry, than laymen. So like my favorite thought is like the phone a friend on like Jeopardy or not Jeopardy, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or whatever, or like did they even ask a professional? I actually don't remember what all their help was. You know, you wouldn't call someone who's just like a random person. You'd want someone who's professional because their likelihood of being correct is just going to be higher. But I guess that's really it. Oh yeah, I did want to talk about this a little bit. Like this is sort of the point I was trying to make here. How we choose between 2 possibilities, right? And when we want to go through the quotes, I wasn't trying to attack his source like entirely, but just sort of talk about how that one website, I don't know where it was. I had been on it before. That gun rights website that I saw I was looking at, where it's just like giving you 2A quotes, like it just doesn't give you the correct context. Like, and what I was trying to do, I didn't analogize this correctly, but when we're talking about like how to read Presser v. Illinois, right? What I was trying to say was, I might be wrong here. I wouldn't die on the hill of being correct here that I'm not interpreting this correctly, but he shouldn't either. And what we should defer to is like, well, what do like legal scholars say on this, and like what's the general consensus? Like I can look up more articles. I don't want to do it because we spent a lot of time in this conversation like looking at articles and like kind of being silent. But what was I saying here? Oh, so it's like, yeah, I don't really want to argue about like what interpretation is correct here, but like, I have multiple articles saying that it's a collective right thing, and I'm reading it, I think I see how they're arguing it's a collective right. He's just telling me I'm wrong based on like a once over, and the meta argument I was trying to make sort of was like, this is the same argument I'm making for your founding fathers quotes, that you can't just read this stuff out of context. Like, this is not a full Supreme Court like ruling here, right? This is like, I don't know, what, 8-10 paragraphs with like, some quotes. So like, I can read the quotes, but like, I contextualizing these quotes right? Am I reading it correctly? Like, I don't have a legal background. Like, I listen to a bunch of law stuff. I read stuff on the law because I find it interesting, but I don't really have like the legal background in order to interpret all this correctly, and I don't really have the historical background either. So like, even me trying to do it, I'm doing the exact thing I'm criticizing him for. Where I'm trying to read this and say what it means, And I think I know enough to say like I wasn't really confident about like how I'm saying this is a collective right. Like, maybe I'm just missing what's important here, Like I could be wrong here as well. But that's where I think like the deference is important, and that just reading stuff from like I was criticizing like the founding father quotes from like the 18th century, and here I am reading something from like the 19th century, 100 years later, still 130 years removed. These people talked like in the old timey way. So who might say I can like properly interpret this in its historical and legal context? And realistically, I'm probably not much better than he is at it. But to me, I'm reaffirming like what I'm reading in a law review article, and he's just saying that like both me and the law review article are wrong, and the law review article is referring to another law review article. And it's like, well, how far down this rabbit hole do I go? I didn't want to just keep doing it because it was kind of like boring. But yeah, so that's posterity for me, and I will say that one a little more fun than I thought. Maybe it'll be more contentious next time we talk about abortion. That one tends to be a little train wrecky. And I've never tried to argue like the history of the Second Amendment too, so he gave me some arguments I had to like consider more. I always thought about the incorporation clause. I don't remember what he called it. I knew about that like the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment in like the early to mid 20th century were interpreted to basically apply the first 10 to like individuals. I think what I said did make sense. Like, when you're talking about like your right to have like speech, religion, and assembly, yeah, sure, that makes sense. I think to like apply that individual level, right? Because those are meant to like not say, not let the federal government tell like, I don't know, like Utah that you can't be Mormon, and then apply that not just at the state level where Utah can tell people like you can't come here and be a Jew, basically, right? Where like we follow that down, like, okay, I can say that's an individual right. When you look at something like the Second Amendment, where if you accept what I'm saying about it, and like what I think is the general like historical consensus, it doesn't make sense as an individual right, because it was never about like an individual having the right to own guns. It was just always intertwined with that militia context. And I think that's where it's sort of like where it doesn't make sense as like an individual right. And some of these cases come after that. Like the 1939 case might come after the I don't know, I can't remember the term he's talking about. Like I didn't know the term when he said it, but I knew the concept he was talking about. So I don't think he really accepted my argument on that, but I think it was like an okay point. Not that I was just trying to make points. Like, I generally do believe that it doesn't make sense to like view that as an individual right that can be bestowed upon an individual. Like, you can't just go like, oh, I agree with you, it was for the states, but now it's also for the individuals. But it's like, wait, an individual can't be a militia, so I'm telling you this right is just for a militia. Then you can't just like say like every individual's their own militia. It's just very simple, very like incoherent. Like, particularly within like regulated, right? Like, it's supposed to be like regulated in training, and we have like the longer version of the NRA. This like stupid Salon article. I wasn't trying to like source shame him, although I do think Salon's better than that random like gun sales website. I can't even remember what it was called. It was Buckeye Guns. Buckeye Gun Pro. Here it is. Yes, I think. Oh, do they just sell guns, or do they just sold guns? Oh, Buckeye's a state, right? Isn't that Ohio? Buckeye Firearms. Yeah, like, I don't think this is a good way to like try and understand stuff. So my point was like just having all these quotes without context doesn't tell you anything. But all right, we're just gonna wrap it up there. Had some fun. It's kind of interesting. Never really got to have that argument before. Definitely less contentious than we were on the internet, though, or like on Twitter. Twitter's such a dumpster fire of a website. But hey, I got someone to come on voice finally, so I give them all the credit for that because most people don't want to have a conversation. All right, wrapping up. Oh.